It started with sunlight. Not metaphorical sunlight, actual, blinding sunlight spilling through the grimy windows of our shared apartment and stabbing me in the eyes like it had a personal vendetta. "Leo, can you help me clean this crap?" Jamie's voice came from his room, loud enough to cut through my podcast and the whir of the fan that never did anything useful. I blinked up from my sketchbook, half smiling to myself. It wasn't the request that caught me off guard, it was the fact that he'd asked. Jamie never asked for help unless he truly couldn't manage on his own. He was fiercely independent in that casual, infuriatingly hot way that made it harder not to look at him longer than I should. We'd been roommates for 2 years, friends even longer. College threw us together in freshman orientation, and somehow we'd never shaken each other off. He was the kind of guy who made fast friends at parties, danced like no one was watching and didn't care if they were, and left socks in the living room with the carefree abandon of a man who'd never heard of boundaries. I preferred quiet corners, sketching strangers on buses, listening more than talking. I wasn't shy, just deliberate. Which made liking Jamie a cosmic joke I was still unpacking. I leaned against the doorframe of his room, arms crossed. "You finally noticed how disgusting your windows are?" He glanced back at me, a smudge of dust streaked across his cheek, hair a mess from pushing it back with one gloved hand. "Only because I couldn't see the skyline this morning. It's tragic, really. A man needs his view." The corner of my mouth tugged upward. I hated how charming he was without trying. His room was a mess, but in a lived-in, boyish kind of way. Socks on the floor, record sleeves stacked by the wall, posters of bands he half listened to. And then there was his cologne. Subtle, woodsy, and totally him. It clung to the air like memory. "Grab a cloth," he said, tossing a spray bottle at me. I caught it, fingers brushing his as I did. Just a brush. Just a spark. But it stayed with me. I told myself I was helping to be nice. To get the windows clean. To be a good roommate. But I knew better. This wasn't about Windex or dust. This was about being close to Jamie in a way I could justify. It was the only kind of intimacy I was allowed. That sunlight had started something. And I wasn't ready for how clear things would look once the grime came off the glass. Jamie and I weren't supposed to be friends, not really. He was a walking cliché of the effortlessly cool guy. Loud, funny, athletic, the kind of person who always knew the right thing to say at the right time. I was quieter, kept to myself more. But during freshman orientation, we got paired up for a trust-building exercise that involved blindfolds, ropes, and a lot of yelling. He cracked a joke about kidnapping, I nearly dropped him during a fall catch, and somehow, that was it. We'd been circling each other ever since. We moved in together junior year, mostly for convenience. His girlfriend at the time had dumped him, and my last roommate had developed a love for late-night saxophone solos. Jamie was easy to live with, surprisingly neat when he cared to be, and always stocked the fridge with beers I liked even though he preferred whiskey. We shared a rhythm. It felt natural. I think that's what scared me the most. How easy it was to fall into step with him. "Remember that time we tried to cook together?" Jamie asked, wiping down the inside of the window frame as I attacked the outside. We were both on chairs, one on either side of the glass. His breath fogged up the pane every few seconds, like a heartbeat. "You mean when you nearly burned down the kitchen trying to flambe instant noodles?" I maintain that it would have worked if you hadn't screamed. I didn't scream, I muttered, smiling despite myself. I shouted preemptively. You screamed. Our laughter tangled in the warm afternoon air. I could see the sky more clearly now, streaks of orange already hinting at sunset. Jamie's silhouette through the glass was softer, blurred, but familiar. He was wearing that Old Navy t-shirt that clung to his chest just a little too well. I forced myself to focus on the streak I'd missed with the cloth. "I'm never cooking with you again," I said. "Lie. You'll cave when I suggest pancakes at midnight." That wasn't a lie. I always caved. Not just to pancakes. There were moments, little ones, that slipped in between the cracks of our friendship. The way he'd grab my wrist when he laughed too hard, like he needed to hold on to someone. How he always said, "Night, Leo," like it was a ritual, even on the nights he stumbled in at 3 a.m. The fact that he'd started bringing back snacks he knew I liked, claiming they were on sale, though we both knew they never were. You ever think about how different things would be if we hadn't met that first week? I asked, voice quieter than I meant it to be. Jamie shrugged, still scrubbing. I don't really go in for alternate timelines. What's the point? I looked at him, really looked. He had a smudge of dirt on the side of his jaw, and his brows were slightly furrowed like he was trying to figure out life's great mysteries through glass. Just curious, I guess. He glanced up, our eyes meeting through the pane. For a second, neither of us moved. Something lingered, unspoken, uncertain. And then his chair wobbled. Whoa, shit. Jamie flailed, arms pinwheeling, and I rushed around the side to steady him just as he teetered backward. My hands gripped his waist, his fell onto my shoulders, and we stood there, close enough to feel each other's breath. Easy, I murmured, heart thudding. You saved my life, he said dramatically, his hands still resting where they shouldn't feel this natural. You saved your own life by having reflexes. His eyes flicked to my mouth and back up so fast I almost thought I imagined it. Almost. I let go first, stepping back like I hadn't felt the electric tension between us spike. He cleared his throat. So, rain tomorrow. You think we should move the chairs off the balcony? I nodded. Yeah, probably a good idea. But neither of us moved. And that silence, thick and charged, said more than either of us wanted to admit. Something had cracked. Something small. But it was enough. It started with a storm. Not the kind you see coming, the kind you plan for, bring umbrellas and waterproof jackets and a backup plan for. This one rolled in like an afterthought, uninvited and chaotic, swallowing the sky in seconds. Jamie and I were on the rooftop, finishing the last of the window cleaning, when the first crack of thunder split through the air like a warning shot. Shit, Jamie muttered, glancing up at the clouds. That doesn't look good. I told you we should have started earlier, I said, already collecting the bottles and cloths. My voice was calm, but inside, I was spiraling. The wind had picked up, sending dust and loose papers skittering across the rooftop like startled birds. Then it started to rain. Downstairs. Now, I called, but Jamie was already grabbing the chairs we'd brought up. We made it as far as the stairwell before the downpour hit in full. Water clung to our clothes, dripped from our hair, and soaked through our shoes. I was shivering by the time we slammed the door behind us. Jesus, Jamie huffed, breathless and drenched. That came out of nowhere. I wiped water from my face, trying to shake the chill in my bones. We're not going anywhere like this. And you're dripping all over the carpet. We're dripping, he corrected with a grin. Fine. We're both a biohazard. Jamie laughed and ruffled his hair, sending another spray of droplets in every direction. All right, come on. Get in here before you freeze. He turned and walked into his room. I hesitated in the hallway, staring at the door like it had never been there before. His room was warm, lived in his, and stepping into it like this felt different. Closer. More intimate than all the movie nights and couch naps we'd shared. But I followed him in. He was already pulling his shirt off, just casually, like it meant nothing, and tossing it into the laundry basket. My eyes betrayed me, catching the outline of his back, the dip of his waist, the water trailing down his skin. I looked away too late. You okay? He asked, glancing over his shoulder. Yeah. Just cold, I said, voice tighter than I wanted it to be. Jamie reached into his drawer and tossed me a hoodie. His favorite one, the navy one that always smelled like him. Here. I caught it, heart thudding. Thanks. You're gonna want dry clothes unless you like pneumonia. I've got some sweatpants if you want. I'll just change in the bathroom, I said quickly, already backing toward the door. He didn't argue, but something flickered in his expression. A small crack in the usual confidence. When I came back, dry but still shivering, Jamie had pulled his comforter down to the floor beside his bed. A bundle of pillows was stacked at one end. The windows were rattling from the storm outside. Figured we'd ride it out in here, he said. Power's flickering. You want tea or whiskey? Tea, I said, settling onto the blanket. He handed me a mug a few minutes later and sat beside me, closer than necessary. Our knees bumped. Neither of us moved. The storm outside was all thunder and wind and chaos, but inside, it was too quiet. Do you remember that party our sophomore year? Jamie asked suddenly. The one at Greg's? I blinked. Where you got wine drunk and cried about that animated dog movie? He grinned. Bolt is underrated, okay? And you told me I was your best friend, like, for times. I meant it, he said, quieter now. Still do. That caught me off guard. The sincerity. The softness in his voice. I looked at him, really looked. His hair was damp and curling a little at the edges. His lips were pink from the heat of the tea. And his eyes, God, those eyes, were fixed on me like I was something worth figuring out. You're staring, he said, voice a little hoarse. So are you, I replied before I could stop myself. He didn't look away. Yeah. The silence between us shifted. Not awkward. Not tense. Just full. My mind raced. Say something. Change the subject. Anything. But my heart wasn't listening. My heart was still back there, when his hand brushed mine during the cleanup. When he leaned into me on the stairwell without realizing it. When he gave me his favorite hoodie like it meant something. What are we doing? I asked, barely above a whisper. Jamie set his mug down, slow and careful. I don't know. And then, he reached out. Not far. Just his fingers brushing mine, tentative, like asking permission. You've been weird lately, he said, not accusing, just observing. So have you, I said. I keep thinking about you, he admitted, almost to himself. At night. In the morning. I don't know what that means. I swallowed. My throat felt too tight. It doesn't have to mean anything. But what if it does? He asked, his hand still against mine, warmer than it should have been. I didn't move. Couldn't. Every cell in my body wanted to close the space between us. But I was terrified. Because what if this broke everything? What if I was reading into things he wasn't saying? I don't want to screw this up, I said finally. Me neither, he whispered. Outside, thunder cracked again. Inside, I let our fingers stay tangled, the warmth between them too honest to ignore. The storm didn't let up. It just kept pressing against the windows, angry and loud, making the whole apartment feel smaller. I could hear the buzz of the power trying to hold itself together, the occasional flicker of the overhead light threatening to give up. But it wasn't the storm keeping me awake. It was the fact that Jamie was lying just inches away, and his fingers were still loosely tangled in mine. He hadn't pulled away. Not when we settled down into the makeshift bed on the floor. Not when I adjusted the blanket and our arms accidentally touched again. Not even when we lay down and our knees knocked under the covers. It wasn't that he was holding on tightly, he wasn't. It was gentler than that. Thoughtful. Quiet. Like he didn't want to break something delicate between us. I was afraid to breathe too loud, like I'd shatter whatever this was. You awake? He asked suddenly, voice hushed and rough. I turned my head just enough to see him, lit by the soft glow of the desk lamp we'd left on. His face was half in shadow, but his eyes were clear. Awake. Searching. Yeah, I whispered. I can't stop thinking about earlier. I swallowed. Which part? He let out a dry laugh. All of it, I guess. The rain. The way you looked at me. The silence. I hesitated. It felt different. Yeah, he said. It did. My heart was a drumbeat in my throat. This wasn't a moment I could pretend away. I couldn't laugh it off or change the subject or chalk it up to just being tired. This was it. That fragile, terrifying space between what was and what could be. I sat up slowly, pulling my knees to my chest under the blanket. Jamie did the same, mirroring me. I need to ask you something, I said, voice barely above a breath. He nodded, waiting. Do you ever, I struggled. Do you ever feel something you don't know how to name? Like it's just there, pressing on you and you try to ignore it, but it's always there. Jamie's gaze dropped to the space between us, his fingers toying with the hem of the blanket. Yeah, he said after a pause. Lately, that's how I've felt every time I look at you. The air left my lungs. I wanted to say something, anything, but my brain froze. I don't know what it means, he continued. I've never really thought about guys like that. But with you, it's not just about that. It's how you make me feel. Like I can actually be quiet around you and it doesn't feel weird. Like I don't have to pretend I've got everything figured out." His voice wavered at the end, and he rubbed a hand over his face. "God, this is coming out all wrong." "No," I said quickly. "No, it's not." He looked at me again, really looked. His eyes were soft, scared. "I think I'm falling for you, Leo. And it's confusing as hell. But it's real." I felt my throat tighten. For so long, I'd imagined this moment. In my sketchbook, in the spaces between dreams, in the way my heart ached after every brush of his hand or every late-night laugh we shared. But hearing it, actually hearing it, was so much more than I could have prepared for. "I've been in love with you for months," I admitted, my voice cracking. "And I didn't want to say anything because I thought I'd lose you." Jamie blinked, startled. "You're in love with me?" I nodded, tears stinging at the corners of my eyes. "Yeah. Stupid, right?" "No," he said, shifting closer. "Not stupid." "You said you're confused," I added, my voice barely holding steady. "And I don't want to be something you're experimenting with. I can't be something you regret." He reached out, slowly, like he was still testing gravity, and rested his hand over mine again. This time, it was deliberate. "I'm scared," he said, "not because I don't feel something, I do, but because I've never let myself feel it before. And yeah, it's new, and I don't know what the hell I'm doing, but I do know that I want you in my life. Not just as my roommate or my friend. I want you, all of you." My breath caught. I didn't realize I was crying until he reached out and gently brushed a tear from my cheek with his thumb. "I don't want to pretend anymore," I whispered. "I'm so tired of pretending." Jamie nodded. "Then don't." And in the space between one breath and the next, he leaned in. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't some movie kiss with swelling music and dramatic lighting. His nose bumped mine, and we both hesitated for a split second, caught in the weight of it. But then his lips were on mine, soft and uncertain, and everything else faded away. The kiss deepened slowly, like we were learning the shape of each other, careful, reverent, full of all the things we hadn't said. His hand slid to the back of my neck, pulling me closer, and I melted into him, months of buried feelings unraveling all at once. When we finally pulled apart, we stayed close, foreheads resting together, breathing the same air. "That was," he began. "Yeah," I said, unable to stop smiling. "It really was." He let out a shaky laugh and looked down at our tangled hands. "I don't know what comes next. I'm probably going to mess this up a few times. We'll figure it out," I said. "Together." He looked up, eyes full of something that felt dangerously close to awe. "You really love me?" "Yeah," I said. "I really do." Jamie leaned in again, pressing a soft kiss to my cheek this time. "Good. Because I think I'm ready to stop running from whatever this is." The storm outside finally began to ease, the thunder growing distant, the rain softening into something almost tender. Inside, I pulled the blanket up around us and rested my head on his shoulder. His arm curled around me like it belonged there. We didn't need to say anything else. We'd said enough. We didn't sleep much. Not because of the storm, though it kept rumbling outside like a grumpy reminder that the world still existed beyond the four walls of Jamie's bedroom, but because every time I closed my eyes, he would shift beside me and I'd open them again, just to make sure he was still there. Still him. Still mine. At some point, we'd ended up tangled together under the blanket, legs overlapping, my head resting on his chest. I could hear his heartbeat when I got quiet enough. It was steady, grounding, real. His fingers were tracing idle shapes along my arm. A small circle. A line. A messy little heart. I don't think he realized he was doing it. "You good?" he murmured, voice raspy with sleep and something softer. I nodded against him. "More than good." "You?" "Still kind of terrified," he admitted, and then chuckled. "But in a weirdly good way? Like first day of school nerves." I smiled. "I think I skipped school every time I had those." "Yeah, well, I'm not running this time." He turned his head slightly, enough to kiss the top of mine. "You make it feel worth staying." That did something to my heart I wasn't prepared for. We lay there in the soft post-confession quiet, the kind that didn't need to be filled. The kind you earned. I kept replaying it all in my head. The way he looked at me when he said my name, the hesitation before the kiss, the sheer honesty of it. No games. No pretending. Just us, stripped down to the truth. I'm probably going to do a lot of dumb things, Jamie said suddenly. Like, I don't know what I'm doing with any of this. Relationships. Feelings. Being emotionally mature instead of a sarcastic asshole. I laughed, shifting to look up at him. You're already doing better than half the guys I've dated. You've dated guys cooler than me? Definitely hotter, I teased. He mock gasped. You wound me. You'll live. He grinned and rolled onto his side so we were facing each other again. His hand slid to my waist, fitting like it belonged there. But seriously, I want to try. With you. Not just, like, have a thing and hope it works out. I want to be with you. My smile softened. I want that too. I mean, we already live together, so that's one step ahead. We could probably share groceries now. Do couples yoga. Get matching mugs. I snorted. Wow, romance really is alive. Hey, I'm trying. He nudged my forehead with his. But also, we should talk about what this means. Out there. Out there, meaning the rest of the world. Our friends. His family. The labels. The weight of it all. I don't need to make a public announcement, I said slowly. But I'm not going to hide either. He nodded. Good. Because I don't want to hide you. There was a moment of quiet again, but it wasn't heavy. It was filled with thoughts neither of us had to say aloud yet. We were still figuring things out, but now we were doing it together. And that made all the difference. Hey, Jamie said after a beat. Can I ask you something important? Sure. What's the protocol if the roommate you're in love with always steals the covers? I smirked. You suffer through it. It's character building. I see. And if said roommate also uses all the hot water and leaves empty cereal boxes in the pantry? Sounds like someone's already regretting falling for me. He leaned in, kissed the corner of my mouth, then lingered there. Not even a little. I curled into him again, feeling his hand slide up under the hoodie he'd lent me, now my hoodie, apparently, and rest against the small of my back. We weren't rushing anything. But we weren't hesitating anymore either. Tomorrow, there'd be questions. Conversations. Maybe even some tough ones. But tonight, there was warmth, laughter, and the beginning of something real. We didn't need to have it all figured out. We just needed to want to. By morning, the storm had finally passed. Sunlight slipped through the cracked blinds, scattering across the floor like golden confetti. The air still smelled like rain and a little like cinnamon, Jamie's shampoo, I realized as I sat up and blinked blearily around the room. He was already awake, leaning against the doorframe with 2 mugs in his hands. Mine was the chipped navy one I always used. His was bright orange with a faded pumpkin on it, an old Halloween cup we'd once fought over when he found out I used it as a paint water jar. He offered it to me now with a crooked smile. Don't say I never do anything nice for you. Wow, I said, taking it. The pumpkin mug? You do love me. He walked over and sat beside me, still warm from sleep, his hand brushing mine as he settled in. I really do. We sipped in silence for a moment. It was easy, comfortable. A new normal already starting to take shape between us. What now? He asked quietly. I looked at him over the rim of my mug. Now. Yeah. Do we tell people? Just live our lives and let them figure it out. I thought for a second. I don't think we need to announce anything. But we don't have to hide either. I mean, if you want to take it slow. He reached out and laced his fingers through mine. I want to go at our pace. Not slow. Not fast. Just honest. I squeezed his hand. Then that's what we do. A gentle knock on the front door startled both of us. We froze like we'd just been caught mid-scandal. Jamie stared at me. You expecting someone? He asked. Nope. You. He shook his head, then leaned in and whispered, Act natural. We shuffled to the door like we hadn't just slept curled up together on the floor. I opened it to find Dylan from down the hall holding a box of pastries. Saw your lights flickering last night. Thought you guys might want some emergency sugar, he said with a grin. Thanks, Jamie said, reaching past me to take the box. You're a lifesaver. Dylan's eyes flicked down to where our hands were still loosely intertwined. He didn't say anything, just smiled a little wider. Took you long enough. My stomach did a little backflip. Wait, what? He shrugged, already heading back to his apartment. You guys have been dancing around each other since Halloween. Don't worry, it suits you. Jamie closed the door slowly and turned to me. Do you think everyone knows? Almost definitely, I laughed. We're not exactly subtle. He leaned in and bumped his forehead against mine. Guess that saves us a few conversations. I nodded, smiling into the space between us. Guess so. Later, we took a walk through the neighborhood. The sidewalks were still damp, and the air smelled like petrichor and fresh possibility. Jamie kept our hands linked the whole way, swinging them back and forth like it was the most natural thing in the world. We didn't talk much. Just walked. Existing beside each other like we always had, except now, there was no pretending. No looking away too fast. No swallowing back words we were too afraid to say. When we reached the corner near the old bookstore we always joked about buying one day, Jamie stopped and tugged me a little closer. What? I asked. I've been thinking, he said, eyes locked on mine. You remember that window you helped me clean yesterday? I nodded, suspicious. The one that led to all of this? He grinned. Yeah. That one. I was gonna replace it. It's scratched and foggy and kind of a pain. Okay. But now I think I want to keep it. Why? He leaned in, kissed me softly, then pulled back just enough to whisper, because it reminds me of the moment everything changed. I didn't say anything. I just kissed him again, a little longer this time. Because yeah, the window was old. The glass was cracked in one corner. But now it was ours. Like everything else we were building, imperfect, maybe, but real. This wasn't the end of anything. It was just the beginning.